Math!
Okay, walking half as much again. So I want you to complete the table to show the total distance walked in each case. So on A, it says Jada's pet turtle walked 10 feet and then half that length again. So what would be the total distance that the pet turtle walked? So it said that the turtle walked 10 feet and then half that length. So if it walked 10 feet, what is half of 10? 5. So it walked 10 feet and then 5 feet, which gives us a total of 15 feet. Okay. On B, Jada's baby brother walked 3 feet and then half that length again. So what total distance did Jada's baby brother walk? The brother walked 3 feet and then half that length. So we have 3 feet and then half of 3, which is 1.5. Okay, so her baby brother walked 4.5 feet. On C, it says Jada's hamster walked 4.5 feet and then half that length again. So what was the hamster's total distance traveled? Okay, so 4.5 feet. And then we have half of 4.5, which would be 2.25. Okay, so that gives us 6.75 feet. Good. Okay, Jada's robot walked 1 foot and then half that length again. So how far did Jada's robot walk? So the robot walked 1 foot and then half that length again. So half of 1 foot would be 1/2 or 0.5. So the robot walked 1.5 feet. On E, it says a person walked X amount of feet and then half that length again. So how would I determine the total distance walked given any distance? So we know that they walk X amount of feet and then half that length again. So I'd want to know what half of the X is. And that would tell me my total length. So I could write it as X plus 1/2 X. X plus 1/2 X feet. It says 2 students each wrote an equation to represent the relationship between the initial distance walked and the total distance walked. So May wrote y equals X plus 1/2 X, and Chiron wrote y equals 3/2 X. Do you agree with either of them? Okay, and explain your reasoning for that. So they are both correct. So May says X plus half of X, and Chiron says 3/2 times X. Well, so let's think about if I have 1X here. That's the same thing as saying y equals 1X plus 1/2 of X. And then I could simplify that. So if I have 1X and then half of another X, I have how many total X's? That would be 1 and 1/2. This is supposed to be equals, sorry. Y equals 1 and 1/2 X. Well, what is 3/2? That is the same thing as 1 and 1/2 X. So these are the exact same thing. So they are both correct. Let's look at 4.3. So I want you to match each situation with a diagram. And it says a diagram may not have a match. So you can pause the video to take a second to match these up. So if you notice, you have 3 situations here. 1, 2, 3. So you're going to match a diagram to each of these. So it says Han ate X amount of blueberries and May ate 1/3 less than that. So which diagram matches that? You should have said diagram C, because Han ate X amount, so this whole section represents the amount that Han ate. Okay, and it says that May ate 1/3 less than that. So she ate 2/3 of that amount. And we have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So May ate this amount, which is 1/3 less. Okay, for May, it says May biked X amount of miles and Han biked 2/3 more than that. So that one we should have matched with B. So May biked a certain distance and Han biked 2/3 more than that. So if you notice, this looks like it's broken up into fifths, but if we look at just the X amount, so just here to here, you see that we have 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So each of these rectangles represents a third. So therefore, this is another third, and this is another third. So Y, which represents Han, takes up 2/3 more than what May's did. Okay, it says Han bought X pounds of apples and May bought 2/3 of that. Okay, so that would also be C. Because if she bought X amount of apples and if he bought X pounds of apples and May bought 2/3 of that amount, well, we have already determined here we had 1/3 less, which means we have 2/3. So C also works for that third situation. Okay, so number 2, you're writing an equation for each relationship between X and Y. So what would be an equation that we could write for situation A? Diagram A. Okay, so we see that X takes up 3 blocks, so that would be in thirds. And Y takes up 1/3 more than that. So Y is equal to X plus another third. So Y equals X plus 1/3 X, which is how many total thirds? Be 4. So I could also write it as Y equals 4/3 X. So let's look at B. Erase that out of our way. Okay, so for diagram B, it says, X represents 3 blocks again. But we notice that Y is larger than X and it has 2 extra blocks. So what would your equation be for diagram B? So Y equals, we know it's going to equal an X amount because it's more than that. And since it's more, it's plus what? Should be plus 2/3 of X. So to simplify that, we could write Y equals, we have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, and then 2 more, which would be 5/3. Okay, what about C? Well, now we notice that Y is less than what X is. So we would not be adding now. We see X takes up 3/3. So if y only takes up 2 of those thirds, what would my equation be? Okay, so we know that C matched our situation here with Han when it said that May ate 1/3 less than that. So that would be subtraction. So less than is subtraction. So y equals x minus 1/3 x, which that would be the same thing as y equals 3/3 x minus 1/3 x, which leaves you with what? So that simplifies to y equals 2/3 x. Okay, and what about D? So x is also 3/3, but y takes up how much of that? It just takes up 1/3. Just takes up 1/3. So we'd have y equals 1/3 of x. Okay, we're not going to worry about number 3. And you're not doing the card sort. So in lesson 4 summary, it's just we're using the distributive property. And if you remember distributive property, that's where you have, for example, 3 times 2 plus 4. That's where you distribute it to each thing. So 3 times 2, and then I have to add that to 3 plus 4. Okay, so when we had a situation earlier where we had x minus 1/3 x, because if you had 1/3 less, then you would actually only have 2/3. So that would be a simplified way to write that. Okay, so you're going to complete lesson 4's Google form. You can work your problems out on your paper. However, you must complete the Google form in order for it to be graded and to get credit. So make sure you complete that.